20th, 2018 Township Committee meeting minutes.
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Abstain.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the April 3rd Township Committee meeting minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the April 3rd, 2018 Special Township Committee meeting minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you. George.
She's not here.
George is not here, okay. Reports. Deputy Mayor Rosenberg, any reports?
Sure. Well, I'll start with a webinar that I attended on, you had told Committeewoman Lieberberg and I that we should study the issue of bringing marijuana to municipalities. And so on the 11th, there was a webinar with prominent lawyers from New Jersey telling the basics of what it is to date. And interestingly, since then, the governor has suggested 6 additional dispensaries. So this is coming. We're not sure how soon, but there's 2 bills right now. And as I understand it, one will give towns 6 months to opt out. Otherwise, there's a 5-year wait and you can't opt out. And another would be a year. So at some point, when we hear this, we're going to have to scramble, if not sooner, and decide, are we going to allow dispensaries? Are we going to allow consumption? What are we going to do? So this is definitely, it's coming. And apparently the governor has it in his budget for 2018 to get revenue from marijuana. So he's already counted the money.
Well, that just changed today because the governor announced that 6 verticals are now being licensed by August. And the vertical includes the grow, processing, and dispensary, all one thing, all one-stop production and shopping. So that wouldn't, you generally need at least 30,000 square feet to do that, and that wouldn't, there's nowhere that I'm aware of in Millburn that would even allow for that. And that
Unless
was,
we
that
move
was
the
just an
recycling
announcement
center.
today.
Actually, there is place in Millburn that
That's
could
zoned for
accommodate.
retail as well?
Well, you'd have to rezone if you were gonna do it, but
Right, that-
putting that aside, but there is certainly this,
The physical.
the physical space.
Well, a couple of the applicants are at 100 and 150,000 square feet, it was announced today. So larger spaces are needed. That was just a governor's announcement today on this issue.
But I do think the point is that we are gonna have to address it at some point
So
and discuss it.
that being said, Kit, do you think it's appropriate to give us a little bit of a summary on where we are as of now, or wait and see?
Oh, I think you ought to anticipate it, I guess. Find out as much as you can about it. I did not hear that news.
Divided up by counties, are divided in New Jersey into 3 sections. And those sections are divided by counties, and there are 6 verticals authorized. Just today it was announced.
Authorized without the legislation having passed?
I don't know the details of it. It came over a news feed and someone,
To see us do. So it's out
Okay,
there.
so it's out there.
So it's out there.
It's up for discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Public discussion at the end of every meeting, and we'd like to hear from you about that.
okay.
Okay.
And the DMDA, as part of my report, I will give a basic, and I have a dog and a pony out there.
Excellent.
So, as everyone knows, the DMDA has undergone a lot of changes, and under our new president, we've been moving at rocket speed. There's been merchant updates that have been going out. There's been work on signage. This week, merchants were asked to make sure they're Googling their businesses, that they're on a Google Business Log. So it's nice to see we're moving, but at this point, I would like to ask Dave Sorkin to please give us,
Not right now,
I thought we were doing it during my report.
not during your report. We're gonna finish the reports, and then
Right.
we'll have everybody do the reports, and then Mr. Sorkin, the current, the
All right.
new, I guess, president of the DMDA.
Okay, then that's all I have to report for now.
Okay, terrific. Ms. Lieberberg.
2 reports. The newly created ad hoc committee that met on July 12th. This is the committee that was established to look at the DPW, Department of Public Works, and look at potential alternate locations. The committee is comprised of residents, township committee members, including Sam and myself, Millburn Engineering, DPW leadership. And as I mentioned, the mission is to meet and provide recommendations for alternate locations. We discussed the current site, the requirements for a potential new facility, building size, vehicle storage, fueling capabilities, residential access, and several residents on the committee have made arrangements to tour the existing facility at the end of the month. The next meeting, the date has not been finalized. It'll be end of August, early September, where we'll begin to explore other potential locations for suitability.
Thank you.
And I have one more report. I attended on the Board of Ed on July 16th. This is a new initiative called the Sandy Hook Promise, and it was the first meeting that was introduced by the Board of Ed. And the Sandy Hook Promise is an organization that was established after the Sandy Hook mass shooting that has established an anonymous reporting system for for school systems. Say something, it's called SSARS, and it's for students, faculty, parents, as well as residents to alert community leadership about events that could be potentially dangerous to individuals and the overall community. The methodology that allows for this anonymous reporting is on a 24-hour basis. The program has been implemented in 300 districts across the country. The program is free to the township, and the Board of Ed is working on rolling this out sometime in the beginning of October. Once a definitive date has been set, the Board of Ed will also welcome any other residents that are interested in participating and educating themselves on the program. And once those dates have been finalized, we will keep you informed.
Thank you. Jimmy, do you have anything?
No problem.
Do you? No. Mr. Levy?
I do, thank you. The Millburn Township Rec Group met. It was the first time in anyone's institutional memory that there was not a quorum present, so there was no official meeting. However, there were two important topics that were addressed that are worth reporting. One, we previously reported that Parsonage Hill was being looked at, corner Parsonage Hill and Passaic were being looked at as a place for a potential field that we would Millburn would acquire either on a long-term lease or by acquisition for a property to host fields, including lights. Negotiations with East Orange are such that now East Orange has decided that it wants to open up its own field complex, maybe, possibly across the street from the East Orange Golf Course. That land is owned by East Orange, and many of you will know it because it houses now a solar array. And it may be that East Orange elects to put the fields there and does not do it with Millburn Township's assistance. Those negotiations are continuing. It's been difficult to deal with East Orange on this because their opinion on the issue of whether to do fields, whether to enter into a negotiation with Millburn keeps changing. And it was also announced that because there aren't enough volunteers of parents to staff the Little League food station, that is going to be privatized. And instead, Little League will be paying a vendor to run the food station, and it will also include non-Little League use of the fields in which it will be open, for instance, for fall ball and other club baseball events. So those two topics were unofficially discussed at the rec committee meeting, but because there was no quorum, no action was taken, and to the extent any action is required, will be taken at the next meeting. That concludes my report.
Thank you. Ms. Paul Eglin?
Thank you. Just the Environmental Commission, another Governor Murphy item. He may be signing a bill that would put a fee on plastic bags throughout the state. The Environmental Commission has also, along with the Green Team, started the conversation. They discuss plastic bags, plastic straws, and other styrofoam products and their effect on the environment and how a ban may work and the impact on the community. And the Environmental Commission also asked, and I remind the Township Committee members and the public, they are still hoping to see support to sign on to the opposition group to the Pilgrim Pipeline. They will be watching for any information and developments coming from New York State if the pipeline is in fact denied or will be approved. And we will keep on target with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald?
Just an announcement for National Night Out that's going to take place on August 7th in Taylor Park from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. Come out and say hi to the police and other emergency services and for a good night.
Thank you.
August
August 7th.
Correct,
From
Tuesday.
6 p.m. Mr. Falcon?
Yes, it's publicly known, but I don't imagine followed closely by people, but Judge Gardner entered a further order in the township's litigation involving the builder's remedy and the declaratory judgment, extending Millburn's immunity another 90 days. He did that at the request of the special master, who wants more time to consider mediation and review of whatever documents he seems to think he needs to review.
Thank you. Mr. Sorkin, would you like to make your presentation regarding the DMDA, please? Thank you.
Hi, thank you. David Sorkin, 77 Fairfield Drive. In the last meeting, it was requested that the DMDA come tonight and provide an update, and I want to thank you for giving us that opportunity. I just want to take a few minutes and let you know what we've been up to, what's been going on at the DMDA. I know that's been a big question. I do want to focus on May 30th is the date that I became president of the organization. Obviously, there's been a lot of discussions here leading up to that date. The purpose of this presentation is to talk about what's been done since that date and, you know, to thank my volunteers for helping us get to where we've gotten in these 6 short weeks. Our immediate objectives coming in on the 30th of May was to stabilize and repair an organization that was in much need of stabilization and repair. Basically identifying the opportunity areas that have presented themselves over the previous however many years, the time period that we've been discussing the DMDA, and address those opportunity areas as quickly and effectively as we can, and to build a strong, sustainable foundation for the DMDA moving forward. The key opportunity areas we identified were in that of compliance and transparency, financial responsibility, merchant and shopper communication, event optimization, and civic engagement. These are all areas where there were clear opportunities that needed to be addressed, and these are the 5 areas of focus I want to just zoom in on a little bit tonight. In the area of compliance and transparency, the steps we've taken to address, first and foremost, we've hired an expert advisor, Beth Lippman, as many of you know, and if she hasn't met with you yet, she is looking forward to meeting with all of you. She's the executive director in Livingston at their DMDA equivalent in Springfield as well. She's got extensive experience, and she's somebody who's been able to step in. She was hired as of July 1st, and we are learning best practices from her. She's guiding us through our bylaw revision, our upcoming election, and even a lot of practices that should have been in play that aren't are helping us optimize the way that we're doing things so we can be confident moving forward that we're doing things the best way possible. As I mentioned, we're rewriting the bylaws. I do want to call out one person. Tom Lee has been fantastic leading our bylaw committee. There's been a lot of participation. We had a meeting last week. The revision of the bylaws has been something that we've always kind of been talking about happening. It's actually happening. We have it calendarized. We're scheduled on September 11th in our meeting to approve those bylaws. In addition, even in the interest of transparency, things like not closing off meetings anymore, or only holding executive sessions, we're really looking to open up what we're doing and be transparent in every move that the DMD makes. And then finally, updating the constituent database. The records we have, we don't know if they're up to date, we don't know if they're out of date. We want to start fresh and make sure that we know who's in the town, who's in the district, and who's in the constituency, so we can communicate with them as appropriate. From a financial responsibility standpoint, we have, one of the biggest challenges we overcame was the finances were on a localized version of QuickBooks on a password-protected computer locked in the DMDA office. We're obviously able to access that and immediately move it to a cloud-based platform, so we won't have that sort of challenge again. We've reconciled the budget. I know there's going to be questions about the budget. We've scrubbed it down to the penny. We've been managing it very conservatively over the last 6 weeks. And Nancy Stone, who wasn't here, has been working very diligently to do that. We've eliminated unnecessary expenses, and the little thing, there was a Dropbox account, an Amazon Prime account, and paychecks, which were no longer using a payroll system. Those things added up. We've scrubbed that completely. And on the flip side, we've applied for certain grants. We received a marketing grant. We're no longer paying for email. We're trying to find money where we can find it and use it as appropriate. And then finally, the 2017 audit, which was asked for by the committee in the spring, that is underway. We've hired an accounting firm, the Spire Group, who does audits for the bids and SIDs around New Jersey, to handle that quickly, effectively, and compliantly, and we look forward to sharing that with you as soon as it's ready. Thank you for your patience, I guess. Merchant communication, Jody mentioned this, Committeewoman Rosenberg mentioned this a bit before. We are, the idea of, first of all, we made personal introductions to each of the retailers going up and down the street, literally shaking hands and introducing the DMDA. That's something that hadn't been done, that was a pleasure to do, but also just to hear and talk to them and tell them about the role of the DMDA was something that was much needed. The email updates, I guess the tone of the email updates is really talking to them rather than at the merchants. We've had 4 email updates over the last 6 weeks. The goal is to inform, to educate, promote merchant engagement, develop the DMDA as a trusted partner. I won't go into the details, but every email offers a way to get involved with something in the town, keep your stores open late. It's the President's Cup run, the signage ordinance. We're running a workshop for merchants next week on how to get their business registered. Every email serves a purpose and encourages a two-way conversation with the DMDA. That's something that hadn't been done on a regular and consistent basis in the past. We've also sent out, again, 4 emails in the last 6 weeks to shoppers. First of all, we got the close by data. I know that was a point of contention. We got 3,000 emails that we added to our database. We're also proactively collecting emails at the farmers market, so we're looking to build our constituent database. The emails that go out, again, they're made to inform, they're made to extend what the town has to offer. We've also reactivated our social media account. We have a couple of recent Millburn High School graduates who are going around, if you see them with phones, helping to promote our Instagram, which is refreshing. And then a clean, consistent branded message, and not to play up branding too much, but you'll see on everything sponsored by the Downtown Millburn Development Alliance in a logo. And for me, just anecdotally, when I told my friends that I was president of the DMDA, they either said they've never heard of the DMDA or they associated it with the organization that brings drama to township committee meetings. We're neither of those things. We aspire to be neither of those things. Obviously, that's a reputation that's been earned. We need to earn our way out of it. In order to do that, the importance of name recognition and positive association can't be overlooked. So you'll see the DMDA brand appearing consistently around town. Event optimization, thank you to all who helped with the farmers market. We've expanded our demographic reach. Shifting the time to 2 o'clock helps us reach not only the morning crowd, but the afternoon crowd, the students coming home from school, the commuters, the dinner crowd. People come to the market and then we see them going into town for dinner. So the first couple of weeks, people were a little confused, but it has been very well received. Today it was storming and the market was packed, which was interesting to see. And you can see up there just something anecdotally off of Work Mom. People are starting to really appreciate the new time for the market. We've offered free parking, which is obviously, people like free parking, but that's just to encourage people to come to the market and not have it be a deterrent that we're closing off part of a parking lot. And we've engaged merchants as well. The bags, we're giving out bags. Merchants have been encouraged to add their information, their menus, be involved and be a part of the market. And we will continue to involve merchants in the market as we move forward. Other events, Millburn Live, this came together in about a week and a half's time for our first event. I do want to thank the people in the room who helped out. There's, Alyssa, thank you for helping us get that together quickly. Again, this is something that was in June last year. We're extending it to the fall. We had local bands and entertainment at every corner. There was a key focus on merchant engagement this year, which we haven't done in the past, even little things like having the accordion player walk through the restaurants at night. We're just trying to put touches on it that really get people more involved and engaged, and the events were well received. And then finally, civic engagement, and this is something, obviously, an important role of the DMDA. We're not just here to throw parties and events. We're here to help promote the town and make the town a better place for people to come and want to work and shop and move their stores into. Alex, I want to thank you. There was an initiative that was started before May 30th where people were literally walking around the town and making a punch list. Is there parking spaces we can add? There are tree wells that don't have trees in them. Little bits and pieces like that we're proud to be a part of. That picture is a picture of 2 parking spaces that were added in front of Common Lot last week. We're going to continue to add more spaces and do what we can to help and work with Alex to upgrade the town. That's a role that the DMDA hadn't actively taken in the past. We did hire a street cleaner. I didn't know that was our responsibility, but apparently it is. So first week of June, we hired somebody to clean the streets. We're streamlining the design review process, and I know that Tom and Jim and a few other people, apparently it's been a bit of a convoluted process for a new business to come into town and try to understand the design review process. This is something that we're streamlining as we try to make it easier and more inviting for businesses to come to town. And we've been educating retailers on the signage ordinance as well, which has been something that's been neglected a bit in the past. So in those 5 areas, that's where we've been focusing our attention. We've accomplished a lot in 6 weeks. There's obviously a lot more work to do. For the second half of 2018, we've got a couple of main objectives. Number one is to strengthen the board. We've lost some board members to attrition, as you all know. The election, which we're working on in the fourth quarter, is going to be our opportunity to engage more volunteers who want to be involved with the board of directors. Our probably primary key initiative is to hire an executive director. I know that it's been discussed in the past of going on Indeed.com and kind of waking up and hiring an executive director tomorrow. Obviously, this is an important role, and we're working with Beth to really clearly identify clear objectives, goals, responsibilities, and accountability for who our next executive director is. I want to thank Committeewoman Lieberberg for offering to help out as a recruiter with getting the right person in that job, and that's probably the most important thing that we need to do in the second half of the year. And then continued focus on opportunity areas. I won't go into them in detail, but there's a lot that we can move forward with, both alone and with the Chamber of Commerce, who we've been in dialogue with to partner on some of their events and shared resources. So that is really where we are. Again, mostly focusing on the last 6 weeks with an acknowledgement there's a lot of work to do, and a big thank you to all for your support as we move forward and build this into the kind of organization we know that it can be.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any questions from the board members? Do you have events planned? Do you have any events planned for the second half of?
We do. Well, we've got 2 Millburn Live events in September. Last year it was 4 weeks in a row in June. This year we split them apart. We're working with the Chamber on a holiday program, which, last year we went separate. This year we're going to try to join forces and do something that's a bit, more robust for the town. And then those are the 3 events that we have planned. Obviously, there's more planning to be done. It's been a bit of a scramble the last 6 weeks to get events on the calendar. In the past, in the fall, it's been the spring events and the winter event in the farmers market. Those were the events. If there are other things that are viable for us to put together for the town, we'd obviously consider them as we try to come up with creative ideas that we can put into play.
Okay. Do you have an events committee or subcommittee?
We do not have an event subcommittee. That's something that we should consider.
To do as well. Okay. Any other?
Hey, you mentioned you cleaned up unnecessary expenses. Can you share some examples of large unnecessary expenses? I'm not talking about like paper clips.
No. The little things add up. I did the payroll tax, for example, going through paychecks, the payroll taxes and the paychecks fees were higher than I expected when I saw the P&L. Right now, we're paying folks on 1099. We're not using payroll. So, again, things like that add up. There aren't a lot of, again, in scrubbing the budget, there aren't a lot of ancillary or frivolous expenses that we identified. The ones that could be eliminated, we cut right out.
Thank you.
So first of all, thank you. You certainly got a lot done in your short tenure here.
Thank you.
So I was at the Millburn Live events, and it seems like it's mostly our local young families. Like, how are you going to try to get, there's always, people talk about things happening in Westfield, Montclair. What are you going to try to do to get people to Millburn instead of just our own residents coming to those bands on the corner?
And that's an excellent question. We've really used our local resources, and it's interesting how there's kind of a whole conglomerate of when somebody has an event. The Chamber posts about it, and then TAP posts about it, and then a lot of other resources pick up on it. That's obviously an opportunity area for us on how to market our events beyond Millburn. I will also say that the close by database, names that we're getting from the farmers market and the databases that we're leveraging, these are people who've been to Girls Night Out, these are people who've been to the car shows, these are people who have come to Millburn for one reason or another who are familiar with the town. So we do have an outreach to people beyond just who's in Millburn. Obviously, it would be nice to see them more in town, but we're, that's, again, as we look to expand our initiatives, that's something that we're going to look into as well.
Okay. And the big question,
Yes.
where's all the money gone? From
Okay.
last year, this year, I know you have to really, but
No, I
that is a
understand.
really big concern.
So the top line answer to that, and
Yeah.
again, when I came in on May 30th, we had about $30,000. And I know that on January 1st, you gave us $100,000, and that's the big question. The majority of that money went to the former executive director's salary, the legal fees, and the close by app, and the payroll, a lot of the payroll taxes. That was about 60 right there. Paying a lot of last year's bills, the executive director, what happened there, and the legal fees, that ate up the money right away. A lot of the expenses that took that away are not recurring expenses. Our goal isn't to blow through money every time we get it. Obviously, we'd like to keep a little in reserve, maybe hold it some aside for a special project. Definitely not come to you all every 6 months saying that we don't have any money left like we've been doing in the past. So part of the financial responsibility is being more conscious of the budget and, you know, the comfort, to me, I don't know if comfort is the right word, but knowing that the key expenses that got us through the first half of the year are no longer things that we need to worry about moving forward.
And moving forward, there was some talk about how checks were signed, how money went out. Is the policy now 2 signatures per check before anything can be paid, like kind of a backup, who was writing the checks, who was approving these invoices? There was questions about that.
No, and that's fair, and I think, right now there's one person who writes the checks and one person who signs the checks.
Same person?
No, 2 different people.
Mhm.
So the person who signs the checks can't write them, the person who writes the checks can't sign them, both on the executive committee. And that's the system that we have in place now. I think once we start staffing up, we'll formalize that process. But in the interest of transparency, we're no longer going to be in a situation where there's a closed room full of people where one person can sign a check if that's what's happened in the past. Right now, there's at least 2. And we hope for that to continue moving forward. And then with Beth in the mix, if there's a best practice or something that other organizations are doing to protect themselves from what may have happened in the past with our organization, we'll obviously put that practice into play.
Because I remember, we all know I was on the first aid squad many years, and there was 2 signatures per check, no matter what. The gas bill, the electric bill, the cable. There was always a check and balance. And I don't know if maybe some of these questions wouldn't have come up if it's too late, that money's gone.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe that should be one of the best practices to consider.
Of course.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I don't know.
No, because Sam wants to ask something.
Oh, go ahead, Sam, go ahead.
Thank you. You're revisiting the bylaws, as I understand your presentation.
Mhm.
They'll have to be voted on.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know in the current bylaws who votes on changes to the bylaws.
Mhm.
Can you share with us how the bylaws, once finished, will be voted upon and whether they're shared with the entire membership?
I might have to phone a friend on this one, but what we know is we've put the process into play. Certified letters go out this week to the entire board to note that in the August meeting, there's going to be a motion to approve the bylaws in September. At that point, we have, I don't mean to put you on the spot, there's 15 voting members who are going to be potentially in attendance at the September meeting, 14 voting members. And
Will
the
your
buyers are gonna
membership
to approve.
have an opportunity to review the bylaws and comment on them before they're put forward for a vote?
We can post them. There's been a committee with folks who are not on the board who've been actively engaging, which again gives us comfort as a board that it's not being done in secrecy. It's there's been an outside group of people engaging in the bylaw revisions. I think we're at a point where I think we're close enough where we're happy to share those with the committee and then for anyone else who's.
You may find it
who's-
helpful to running the DMDA if the bylaws are shared with everyone, therefore you preclude later complaints that the bylaws were adopted without proper vetting among the members.
Of course, we'll do what's appropriate in order to make that a smooth process. And thank you for that.
Any other questions?
I do have one more.
Okay.
Yes.
So you said you went around and introduced all your stuff to the merchants.
Mhm.
How about the landowners, like the people who actually own the property? Are you as engaged with the property owners? Because that's where the money's coming from, not the merchants.
It's been more elusive to go and shake hands with property owners, but we work with Donna downstairs, and last week we got the list of property owners.
Okay, great.
And we're going to be, again, as we build our database, but that's something that once we have a list, we plan on engaging with the property owners as well, especially with elections coming up. We want to make sure that we know who they are, they know who we are, and they understand what their role is in the DMDA.
That's great.
Thank you. Any other questions? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time, thank you for your
hard work.
support, and thank you for
Thank you.
for all that you do.
The next item on the agenda. You want to take a bath? The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda resolutions. On the consent agenda are the bills list, authorizing refund of tax overpayments, redemptions of 2 liens, refund the payment of liquor license, Rackets Club, accept an easement agreement, renewal of the ABC liquor license for Taub, award bid for resurfacing project, East Will and Bleecker, approve sidewalk cafe licenses, EVO, and Lemon, and Casita, and extend recycling contract through August 31, 2018. Do we have any questions or comments from the committee on the consent agenda items? Anybody?
No.
Okay. Any comments or from the public with respect to any of the items on the consent agenda? No? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the resolutions listed on the consent agenda?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote?
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Stahl Egler?
Yes.
And Mayor Barsney?
Yes. I would like to now introduce Lou Mai, our township auditor, and Mr. Gadloff, our CFO. We received a copy of the audit, and we received an amended summary without the extra one. Are there any questions from committee members on the audit?
Do you want to make a clarification so that we all have
Well, we
it?
have to revise.
Yeah, we all
Receive
received
the
a
revised.
revised
Yes.
summary.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes. Would you like to just
Let me
identify
speak to-
that?
Let me speak to
Why
that.
don't you?
Okay, I mean, I'm embarrassed that we had a typo on the synopsis that was, I don't know if it was published yet or not published yet. I actually sent an amended copy earlier today. I got when I was gathering my information to come here today, I said, oh, I saw this little, there was an extra one on the bonds and notes line, which raised it from 19 million to like 191 million, which had a little impact on the total. And so I changed that, and then while I was at it, there was one other little typo in the recommendations where it said by the 15th of, and I put the TH in there now where it's supposed to be, so it says the 15th of the month. I mean, inconsequential compared to 191 million. But, so I just wanted to speak to that, and I apologize for that. I mean, I don't know how it happened, but things happen. Fortunately, that is an unaudited number. The financial statements are accurate. I made a mistake when I was compiling the synopsis. So when I saw that today, I cranked out a bunch of copies for you today. And as I said, I sent another electronic copy to Megan to give to the clerks, if she hasn't filed it, to use this one for the advertisement.
Thank you.
Okay? Any, do you?
I have a question.
Good, there we go.
Go ahead.
These are public documents, and both the township committee and the public can go through the financial statements and look at all this and have specific questions. I always like to ask, though, how do you find the general health of the township, the fiscal health of the township? Because for people who don't understand these financial documents, or don't have the wherewithal to go through them and ask particular questions, they may want to know, is this a healthy municipality fiscally?
Well, I can answer that, partially with other people's assistance, like the rating agencies have always been kind to the municipality by giving you like the latest credit rating, I guess, was AAA, but fortunately, you don't have to have, since you have a good book plan through the finance department and through yourselves, you don't need to, you haven't gone to permanent financing in quite a while, so you haven't had the official recognition by one of the standard rating agencies, but you have a healthy surplus that's replenished annually. You've managed your process. I mean, those are all key things that a municipality would look for. You have professional staff, which is really important for the credit rating agencies and for me too, because, I mean, the financial statements are prepared internally. So the only thing I can say is I think you're very healthy. Your fund balance compared to your operations is somewhere around 20%, I think. 18, sorry. And so, I mean, that is above average. And so I would say, based upon that, you're a healthy community.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have,
I have one.
oh, go ahead.
Could you tell me what the, I assume the cash and investments portion for 2017 reflected people prepaying taxes?
That's in here also.
Yes. And where was that, what kind of vehicles were used for the, for those deposits? Were they put in CDs or any kind of, what kind of short-term funding or long-term funding did the township utilize? for
So
that?
I can answer that. Essentially, we're limited to how we can invest money. You're not allowed to put it into anything risky. So general stock market that most of us would have as individual, that's all out. So we have a very good relationship with Investors Bank, and we're getting a very good rate just on our general bank accounts. But we also, so the prepayments went into a variety of CDs. Essentially, we staggered them over the course of the year. So from really the end of December, when the prepaids came in, and we still have a few outstanding now, they were staggered in 60, 90, and I think 120 days, in 10 million and 5 million increments. So that way, every few months we have the cash coming due, and then we can see what our cash flow needs if we need to change them or pull some back or reinvest them. So it's fairly conservative, but it's public money, so we tend to want to make sure that we're conservative with it. And we're only allowed to invest up to 397 days, so you can't go longer than that on any one investment.
In the beginning of the year, you also adopt a cash management plan that sets forth all of the investments that you're allowed to make, which is in accordance with the state regulations. So if you look at those, that'll tell you basically what you can and cannot do, which is very limited.
Any other questions? Would you, is there anything else you'd like to, so?
Well, just one little thing.
Yeah,
Well, not one little thing. Last year you had several comments,
right.
all of which were basically cleared. And this year there's only 2 comments in the financial statements, which you, if you look, it's like the last page of the last page of the financial statements, which in most cases that's what everybody turns to, and they skip all the rest of the stuff in front of it. But there's only a couple of comments, and they both relate to the court. And I know Colleen Brennan, my associate, has worked with them to try and resolve those issues, and they've been pretty much resolved at this point, I believe.
Yes, I came back and I spoke to Wayetta when she came back from vacation after the audit was complete. Went over the comments with her, how they came about. The late payments have been resolved. That was due to the fact that you had change of staff there for a little bit, and you didn't really have a consistent individual in the position.
Would you just identify what the comments are, just so
Oh.
your
Yeah,
commentary is complete?
I can do that. You do it. Go ahead.
I am speaking to the recommendation of the court dispersing funds to the appropriate agencies by the 15th of the subsequent month, which is a requirement by the AOC, is that they all get dispersed due to the fact that you had switch of staff there, and it was a little inconsistent, so you hired Wayetta. That's been resolved. All disbursements are now being done by the 15th of the month. The other item was the cash bail book needed to be adjusted to correct an out-of-town bail receipt that was entered in error. We identified that, she contacted the AOC, and that has since been adjusted.
Yeah, some of those things, the AOC is the administrative office of the courts for any, if I don't know if anybody knows that, I mean, and there's some errors in, once an error gets into this computer system is all state run, basically. If the error gets into the system, the local court can't fix it. You have to talk to the AOC, and they have to make those adjustments, and that's what this other adjustment was.
So this was an
sometimes it takes-
adjustment that wasn't on our end.
It was something that was entered in error, tried to be corrected, but they couldn't get it out of the system. It had nothing to do with, it was just a book entry that needed to be done, basically.
Thank you. Problem, what's gonna happen next year?
Hopefully it won't. Well, look diligently for something else, you know.
Fair enough, thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else on this? Okay, so, are there any questions by the public on the 2017 audit? May I have a motion to approve Resolution 18174, certification of the 2017 audit?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
I have a vote, please.
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Dahl Egler?
Yes.
And Mayor Barsting?
Yes. May I have a motion to approve the corrective action plan, Resolution 18175?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote?
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Dahl Egler?
Yes.
And Mayor Barsting?
Thank you, yes.
Mayor, I'm gonna pass down a document the governing body all needs to sign, indicating that you approve the acceptance of the audit. And then you sign.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is our discussion with respect to the joint meeting project. So at our last meeting, we had the presentation by the joint meeting. Jody wasn't here, right? Were you here?
I was here.
Oh, you were here. Okay, I'm sorry. So, they have, their, do you wanna lead that discussion, Sam?
Yes, well, we asked joint meeting to present at the last meeting that there are two projects. One is a flood mitigation facilities project that is approximately $100 million. Approximately 90% of that ultimately will be paid by FEMA. The other balance of that project over a number of years will be incurred by the 11 municipalities, including Millburn. And that is a project to, for those who weren't here, joint meeting is a wastewater facility treatment that 11 municipalities, including Millburn, participate in. Your sewage water goes to this. And a flood mitigation project has been planned by the members of the joint meeting in order to prevent, among other things, a 50 and 100-year storm. The presentation was at the last time Sandy was about 2 inches away from enveloping the facility, which would have prevented no more wastewater to have been entered the facility, would have been dumped into the river. And so that's project one. Project two is another capital facilities project in which we would be paying in the neighborhood of $680,000, I think. In which those are general capital facilities that were presented last time. The way it works is joint meeting of its 11 members will hold a meeting this Thursday. I am the liaison, and Millburn will be asked to commit to vote whether it approves or disapproves of both of these motions. It essentially is an expenditure of money. A majority only is needed, and of the 11 members, all but one at the last meeting indicated its intent to vote yes. And so we decided as a township committee that, and before I raise my hand either way, we have a resolution to direct me on behalf of the township committee on how to vote on both of these, the capital improvement project and the flood mitigation facilities project, and that is this resolution.
The 680 though is the total price, it's not just for Millburn, right?
No, that's just
Millburn's
us.
piece?
That's just us. That's on the capital improvement project side.
It's the every 5 years or so they have a capital improvement, but
And the other one's about 3-point-something million.
3.9.
3.9 million to us over a period of time, which Alex can explain if anyone wants, will be bonded out. We don't have to come up with that now. Essentially, as joint meeting presented to us, we are getting the 11 municipalities are getting a $100 million improvement project at 10 cents on the dollar because FEMA's picking up about 90% of it. And that's a pretty good bargain for this particular project.
And how do we finance this?
So the flood mitigation project, the portion in which Millburn would be responsible for approximately $3.95 million would be financed through a 0% interest loan by the New Jersey Bank, which used to be the New Jersey Infrastructure Trust. That would last for approximately 3.5 years, at which time the project would begin and they would be submitting invoices to the New Jersey Bank, which would then be refunded by FEMA reimbursements. So at the end of that time, the object is to have a payout that would include only that 10%, which is $395,000 from the township.
Okay, and we pay that out of what?
That would be paid out of any reserve that we were able to establish as a result of over those 3 years, as we have for the capital that we would potentially authorize in February, from the bills that are charged to the residents, the $161 that our residents pay on sewer.
Just so, Mayor, just so everyone's clear, the vote is scheduled for this Thursday. There is a risk, given what happened at the last joint meeting with one municipality, who I don't want to identify, raising some concerns and issues that if those concerns and issues as presented by the joint meeting director are not are not presented to the satisfaction of that municipality, the vote may be delayed till the next meeting. So I want everyone to understand that this resolution is to cause me to vote whenever this vote comes up. If it may not be this Thursday.
Okay. So, okay. So these are passed on to through sewer charges, essentially.
They are. Just,
Okay.
again, for the public, your sewer water goes somewhere, and it goes to a facility called Joint Meeting in Elizabeth, along with 11 other municipalities.
Okay.
So I will move, if there's no other questions, I will move resolution.
Hang on, 1 second. Are there any other questions? Okay. Would you like
I'll
to make a
move
motion?
Resolution 18-176.
Second.
Well, is it to vote in favor? I mean, the resolution, though, is to authorize a vote, but we want more than that. We have to direct how you're going to vote, yes?
Yeah, I know, I was going to do that second, but we can do it all in one.
I would do it all in one at this
I've
point.
provided a resolution.
We didn't include that one.
You didn't do it?
No, we just kept it the way it was.
Okay, so I'll
It
move.
says in favor of.
I'll move the affirmative version of Resolution 18-176, which is to cause the Township Committee representative to vote in favor of the expenditures for both of these projects.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Ball-Igla?
Yes.
And Mayor Burstein.
Yes. Okay. Next resolution is Resolution 18178. It is to reject the bids for town hall renovation. Any questions or comments from the committee members with respect to that? That bid is being rejected as the bids came in higher than anticipated. No questions, comments? Okay.
So where do we go from here, though?
Well, that's up to, I believe at this point they are going to revisit the plans. And then once they revisit the plans, it may go out, it is going to wind up going out to rebid, but that's not today. May I have a motion to approve Resolution 18178 to reject the bids for town hall renovation of the bathrooms?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Ball-Igla?
Yes.
And Mayor Burstein.
Yes. Next resolution is 18179, resolution to reject the bids for the removal of the flex parking. We received 2 bids. One was non-conforming, non-responsive, and one was substantially over engineer's estimate. Are there any questions or comments with respect to resolution 18179? May I have a motion to approve resolution 18179?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Ball-Igla?
Can I say a couple words before I give my
That was
vote?
before, which is comments.
I've lost my chance to comment.
I thought I asked for comments.
I thought it was going to be in reaction to what my vote is. May I comment, Mayor?
No, you're in the middle of a vote. And then if you want to comment after your vote, you can.
Oh, okay, so I have to vote yes.
Yes.
Or
Oh, you can,
I'm sorry?
go ahead.
Okay.
I'm
Mayor
sorry.
Burstein.
Yes. Okay. Would you like to say something?
Yes, I have prepared words. In response to the town survey, it was clear that a majority of the residents would like to have seen the flex parking removed. The town advertised for bids, and unfortunately, only 2 bids were received, and they both have to be rejected. I will continue to advocate to have the business administrator and the engineering department, along with our town planner, hopefully, work together to review the best way to get Millburn Avenue back to a safe thoroughfare with safer and adequate parking, reduce the bump outs, return the right-hand lane from Millburn Avenue to Main Street so vehicles can move over for emergency vehicles and allow large trucks to safely turn and no longer knock down and into traffic and light poles. At a previous meeting, it was said somebody wished that she had a magic wand to undo all this, I paraphrase. There's no magic wand. We still must address the consequences of complete streets with its $6 million price tag that was voted in by my predecessors that allowed this to happen. We will work together to get Millburn Avenue back to its functionability and Millburn's reputation back. And as I said, we have to vote to reject this bid because the way they came in, unfortunately, 2 bids came in and they both had to be thrown out. So I found that very sad.
Thank
And that
you.
was my comments.
Thank you. Okay. Next item on the agenda, second reading and consideration of adoption ordinance 2505-18. I present for consideration an ordinance entitled 2505-18, ordinance amending Chapter 7, Traffic of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Millburn. This ordinance eliminates the requirement that cars must be parked into a parking space and permits the alternative of backing into a space. Tonight is the time set for the public hearing and final passage as advertised in accordance with law. I declare the hearing open. There is now, the hearing is open to the public. If there's anyone who would like to comment on ordinance number 2505-18, permitting back-in parking. Okay, please, don't all rush up here at once. Anyone from the Township Committee want to comment on this particular ordinance? No. Yes, no?
No, it
No,
makes
okay.
sense. I'm happy.
I think it is a safer way to exit a parking space. I move that this public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading, and that the township clerk be directed to publish the ordinance by title as passed on final reading in accordance with law. May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Gallego?
Yes.
And Mayor Burton?
Yes. Mr. Levy?
Ordinance number 2506-18, second reading. I present for consideration ordinance entitled Establishing a Temporary Food License Fee for Food Vendors at Temporary Events Within the Township. This was previously presented on first reading. Purpose of the ordinance is to establish a temporary food license fee for food vendors, $50. Participating in temporary events within the township, the license fee is to apply to farmers market vendors as well. Only one license fee is required from farmers market vendors per year. In accordance with law, tonight is the time set for the public hearing and final passes as advertised.
I declare the hearing open. Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on ordinance number 2506-18? Is there anyone from the committee who has any questions or comments with respect to ordinance number 2506-18?
Mayor, I recognize no comments. I move that the public hearing be closed and the ordinance be adopted on final reading, and the township clerk be directed to publish this ordinance by title as passed on final readings and in accordance with law.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Gallego?
Yes.
And Mayor Burton?
Yes. Ms. Hall Eglo, you are going to introduce first reading of ordinance 2507-18.
I would like to present an ordinance entitled Township of Millburn Ordinance Number 2507-18. An ordinance of the Township of Millburn, County of Essex, State of New Jersey, amending Chapter 9, Building and Housing of the Revised General Ordinances of the Township of Millburn. Brief explanation. This ordinance is a result of a resolution brought before the Township Committee by the Environmental Commission. I think this started about 3 years ago. Its purpose is to protect the neighborhoods by ensuring that builders are in fact building to the drawings and specifications submitted to the building department. In order for the builder to obtain the final CO, it will be the builder's responsibility to pay for and present verification that the framing is correct and does not exceed the allowable height. The verification must be obtained from a licensed surveyor or architect and be submitted either by AutoCAD or paper documentation. This ordinance only addresses new construction. The Environmental Commission looks forward, though, on the side, working with the Building and Engineering Department, how to address partial knockdowns and additions moving forward. Any questions?
May I have a, wait, you have to move.
Okay, no questions?
No, not first reading.
Okay. I move that the ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with the law in the item and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, July 17th, 2018.
Nope.
No?
Tuesday, August 14th.
Oh.
May have changed. I didn't, that's probably my mistake.
Okay.
They should all be August 14th, by the way.
August 14th.
My apologies.
Right, because today is July 17th.
Yes, why don't you reread it just so we get it for the record?
Okay, I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with the law in the item for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, August 14th, 2018.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Ball-Eitler?
Yes.
And Mayor Barsting?
Yes. Ms. Lieberberg, you are scheduled to sponsor ordinance 2508-18.
Yes, I'd like to, this ordinance will correct certain conflicts with posted signage on Millburn Avenue and establish a subsection for 3-hour metered parking and further establish 3-hour parking on certain sections of Millburn Avenue. The ordinance being introduced changes the time limit parking on Millburn Avenue from Short Hills Avenue to Morris Turnpike to 3-hour parking and establishes a designated business parking spaces on the street. It further establishes a section under Section 7-11 for 3-hour metered time limit parking. This ordinance will remove conflicts between posted parking time limits and those that still remain codified for Millburn Avenue from Douglas Street to a point 100 feet west of Parkview Drive. I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with law in the item and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, August 14th, 2018.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Ball-Eitler?
Yes.
And Mayor Barsting?
Yes. Ms. Rosenberg, you should actually be introducing the next ordinance. Do you have the information?
Chickens?
Yes.
All right.
It's chickens, it's chicken time. Hang on one second.
Here you go.
I would like to present an ordinance entitled Township of Millburn Ordinance Number 2509-18, amended Article 5 of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Millburn. The purpose of this ordinance is to provide appropriate standards and regulations for the keeping of chickens for non-commercial purposes within the suburban residential environment of Millburn Township. This ordinance establishes standards and limitations to avoid adverse impacts on neighboring properties and residents and to provide for the health and safety of the chickens. So, we've had a lot of input from residents, some of who I see here, who have started us on the Meadowbrook and Glenwood area. In general, there's requirements limiting the height, limiting the amount of chickens, no roosters, girls only, no slaughtering, no free roaming, what to do if the chicken dies, what happens if there's a violation, permits. There's a lot, so please look at it and obviously give us your input. And if you want to meet with me or talk about it, please take a look at it. I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with law in the item and for hearing on final passage on Tuesday, August 14th, 2018.
May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote, please?
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Ball-Eitler?
Yes.
And Mayor Barsting?
Yes. I would like to present an ordinance entitled Township of Millburn, ordinance number 2510-18, an ordinance of the Township of Millburn, County of Essex, State of New Jersey, amending and supplementing Article 6 zoning provisions of the Millburn Township Development Regulations and Zoning Ordinance. The purpose of this ordinance modifies regional shopping center use within the regional business B1 zone to allow for the installation of a limited number of permanent vendor displays, to allow under certain conditions for the outdoor display of for sale merchandise, and to change the parking requirement to reflect current industry standards for retail stores and shopping centers. I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with law in the item and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, August 14th, 2018. May I have a second?
Second.
May I have a roll call vote?
Mr. Levy?
Yes.
Ms. Lieberberg?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Ball-Eitler?
Yes.
And Mayor Barsting?
Yes. We have now reached the new business section of our agenda. The first item is live, it has been raised that we might want to consider live streaming for planning board and board of adjustment meetings. So, Ms. Eglo, I believe that you thought that this was your recommendation?
Yes.
Do you want to explain
Sure.
why you think it's important?
I think it's, first of all, important that we have now live streamed our township committee meeting. We have the equipment in place. It would require, I'm having an R problem tonight. It would require an additional camera, which actually would be helpful tonight. At any presentation, that would be beneficial. And I think there's just a lot going on in town that people are not aware of. And for instance, the last zoning meeting, Board of Adjustment, was about the proposal for Exxon gas station and a 24-hour 7-Eleven. And I was out of town, and I couldn't come back that Monday, and I was all set to come home, and an emergency family, I couldn't come home, and I would have live streamed that. I heard it was like a really very interesting, long meeting, and a lot takes place at these meetings. And I think that residents have no idea what's going on, and the more we can be transparent and we can feed the information, we will get, I mean, I see all the regulars here, and it's great to see you, but we can get new people involved in town, and we can get people who might want to serve on committees and know what's going on. And I think that many towns do this, and I don't understand why anyone would object to it. But if you do, I'd be curious why.
Mike, before I would even consider it, I would want to get the input of the chairs of both the zoning board and the planning board. I think their input would be very helpful. The people who serve on the zoning board and planning board are volunteers, and I think it would be really important as well to make sure that they don't become subject to derisive and derogatory social media commentary, because you don't want to lose volunteers as well. And that's a concern of mine, having been in this position for a couple of years. So I'm not opposed to it necessarily, but I would like to hear from our committee, the chairs of these committees, to get their input on it as well, and to see how they feel about it. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, well, I'm not opposed to it, but there's a technical issue because planning, which I served on, and zoning largely rely on schematics that are presented to people to look at, and the camera is there, and none of those.
There's going to be a camera here, and there'll be somebody who
Oh,
will have to.
there'll be a camera here?
Yes.
So you'll be able to pick up it'll be hard for the person at home to stay up with what's going on, other than the dialogue, because that person won't be able to view what's being presented as they would if they attended here. Now, you could say, and I would, then come here if you want to see the
But a lot of
other
people
materials.
can't. They've got kids at home, they have obligations, they're on the train. I just don't see why, we're keeping these closed meetings. We want people to know what's going on in town. And perhaps by watching one or two live streaming, they might start coming.
Now, I don't have an objection to it. I'm just saying, technically, how would we present the source material about which there is a dialogue occurring?
Well, Alex has investigated this, how other towns do it. There would have to be somebody operating the toggle, or how.
There would have to be a second camera, and certainly, you can explore the possibility of whether technology can be integrated into that in terms of presentations. So it would take some investigation.
The applicants could be required to submit the plans ahead of time so they could be a lower corner of the screen.
Well,
so to
they're
speak.
submitted well in advance, because
Right.
the planning board and zoning board members have to review the plans and,
But some of them are,
well, yes. So the
Maybe.
question is whether or not they can also submit them on some, electronic.
right, I'm not sure
way.
how technically that's accomplished, but.
Yeah, well, it's certainly something we can look into. Other towns do it. I don't know if many towns do it, but there are other towns that do it.
But I think it's a fair point that you raised, Mayor, that there may be some volunteers who are reticent about appearing on camera for their duties on this. So
Right.
that's something that probably should be explored.
And people have to understand that zoning board and planning board hear testimony. So anything that would be considered by the zoning board or planning board would have to be somebody who makes a presentation in front of them and not from the comfort of their sofa.
Correct.
Okay.
And you can't weigh in, I'm sorry, Jody, it's like you can't also weigh in from home, you're just a spectator.
Correct.
So your statement, that, Committeewoman Echo's statement that nobody knows what's going on in town, I would dispute that.
Of course.
But I do think giving people access, if they want to know what's going on in town, and more access, makes it harder for them to say what's going on
Well,
in
I mean,
town.
also, as she used the word, we keep it closed. We don't keep it closed, it's all open, but it's not televised at the moment.
I think the
Well,
more
that's true.
access, it can't hurt. Do we have any idea how many people actually access?
Our live streaming? We do, right?
Yeah, we could get the committee those figures for sure. In terms of when we first started and how many are accessing it, even tonight, we can let you know.
Anything else? No? Okay. All right, so I think we should reach out to the chairs of the two boards and hear what they have to say.
Would you also reach out to Eileen and Martha, or would you just be more concerned with the chairs?
At the moment, I'd reach out to the board, to the chairs. All right, and the other item of new business, that's on the agenda at least, is we're going to discuss our solicitation ordinance, yes? Mr. Falkenbach.
Yeah.
Long way agenda.
Briefly, we're taking a look at amending the existing ordinance to provide what a number of municipalities have, a no-knock provision whereby a resident who wants to not be interrupted or disturbed when someone comes to, a salesman comes to the door to sell them something or solicit for a service, that the individual has to honor that sign that the resident puts out and go on to the next place. There will also be a list maintained by the municipality of the people who have such a sign, which is given to a solicitor before they begin canvassing to sell their product or whatever is involved, so they know which properties not to disturb.
Okay, any questions?
I actually encountered this active environmental myself when they knocked on my door on a weekend, not during the 9 to 5, but on a weekend, and basically said, I'm working on your neighbor's house over there doing some spraying, you know, I don't know, who do you use? And I said, I'm sorry, but there's no soliciting. They're like, well, you don't know that. Well, actually, I do know that, but they basically said, we're this is being litigated right now, but by the way, do you want to do it? You know, they were very, very persuasive, but it looks like they have national litigation ongoing, so it's obviously in their business model to sue so that they can spray, but they were definitely very aggressive.
So to spray. Okay. Is there any other item of new business that anyone wants to raise? No? Okay. Anybody have any item of old business they want to address? Nope. All right. Well, we're up to public discussion, so if a member of the public would like to make a statement, please come on up. Janet?
Janet Pizar, Main Street. I'd just like more clarification on what is called solicitation and knocking on a door, because 12 years ago, 13 years ago, there was a question about going into a home to solicit a sale and going to a home to address issues happening in the community where you want to make people aware. There's an ask, there might be an ask, and that is, are you interested in signing a petition? Is that a solicitation? Because at that point in time, again, this is not sales calls, but I was told I had to go to the police department and register the date and time and territory where I was going to do such a community service event. Is that a solicitation?
Right, not under I can answer that
I
under.
think we want to probably not refer to that at this
Right.
moment.
Okay.
I think we're going to treat them all the same. We're gonna revise our ordinance and everything will be treated the same.
So it's any knock on any door that's not anticipated?
There are rules that pertain to non-commercial speech and rules that pertain to commercial speech. Increasingly over the years, those two, the courts have tended to move them more together. But there have been a number of decisions pertaining to not infringing upon free speech that individuals may wish to go and have a petition signed for, you know, Greenpeace or something, or whatever, political campaigns, and then the Fuller Brush man who wants to unload some brushes. And we're in the process of analyzing all of that and expect to update the ordinance to incorporate all of the latest requirements and conditions.
But
Okay.
before it's updated today, what can she do?
Put up a
Well,
sign.
Yeah.
Applies
Well,
to
but that's
anybody
not
who
her
comes
question.
to the door.
That's not her question. The question is, today, how would you be treated if she wanted to go to her neighbors and have a petition against goats in the, front yard?
It's not solicitation right now.
The municipality is not involved in that aspect at current. If someone does not wish to entertain solicitations for anything, they put that notice by the door. And they just don't want to hear from you, thank you, and move on to the next.
And that's where it's going.
No, that's the law today.
Oh.
But what Millburn, we actually came up with an ordinance 2012 on the subject, and all kind of natural disasters around here intervened, and the township never took it up. We're going to revive that discussion when we have a better grip on what the ordinance ought to say.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening, David Cosgrove, 99 Oakview Terrace. Thank you, Mr. Falcone, for the report on that litigation. I was hoping for some more detail. The suit's been out there for a while. The court order talks about documents. It sounds like documents have been exchanged. Has there been any discovery? There was an hour-long meeting tonight, I think, on the litigation. There must be something going on more than,
Well, as a general proposition, you know, the township committee does not answer questions or comment upon pending litigation. You do know that the court signed an order and you know what its contents are. I don't know what documents that refers to.
I'm asking for non-privileged information. I'm not asking you for the privileged information. Has discovery been exchanged at all? Do you know that, or
No,
or you just won't
Whether-
comment on it?
no, the policy is not to comment upon it, privileged or not.
Okay. Very good. Mr. Levy, to follow up on one of your comments that you had made about filing amicus briefs, the committee should know that I approached our counsel in the litigation, asked whether he would consent to me intervening in the lawsuit, and I was told no, that the town committee will not allow that.
Well, to be fair to that discussion, you have to ask the court whether you can intervene. You don't have to ask the township committee whether you can
I
intervene.
wanted to know whether he'd consent.
What's that?
I wanted to know whether the township would consent to that motion, and they've refused, apparently.
Well, I don't know. Well, you're asking whether the township would have opposed your intervention motion?
I asked whether they would have consented to my motion to intervene, and I was told the committee will not do that, will not
But
consent.
did you make a motion to intervene?
I haven't yet. I think it's probably a waste of time if the committee won't consent. Thank you.
Anyone else? Mr. Mazur?
Ed Mazur, Greenwood Drive. We've had, as you mentioned, the Exxon case, which is a 24-hour operation coming before the zoning board. As Mr. Falcon has stated, because of time of the application, any ordinance that the township passed at this point to regulate business hours may not apply to that. But what I would like to see is the township move ahead with this and start looking at ordinances to address hours of business operation. We have ordinances governing when landscapers can start working during the week and on weekends. I'd like to see this addressed, and I think it's nuanced in many ways. Many people here would oppose a 24-hour 7-Eleven in that area where there are apartments and houses across the street, but something like a 24-hour operation of a drugstore such as Walgreens in a business area might be considered very favorable by the town. Similarly, the hours that a restaurant may need to be open to be commercially successful may be different than a nail salon. So what I'd like to see is over the next several months that the township, town council, perhaps DMDA, start looking at this, because there are some other operations which could be 24-hour that currently aren't. Lifetime Fitness has their gyms open 24 hours a day. The ones in town are not. Pathmark, when it was in business, had supermarkets open 24 hours a day. I don't know that we'd want the ShopRite on Main Street to be open. So I'd like to see this done over the next several months and have a discussion on how we might proceed on that.
Thank you.
One other thing, Ms. Eglow mentioned getting more community involvement, and what I would like to suggest is on the township website that maybe there be a vehicle for making suggestions there by residents, such as, I think the one thing we all experience is traffic. What can be done, certain areas where maybe there are areas where people may have suggestions, traffic or other operations of the town, and encourage people to communicate with somebody at town hall where these things are logged in. Some of them may not be viable, others might, but at least encourage people to get involved and to make suggestions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Carrie Eller, 56 Byron. First, thank you to Committeewomen Eglow and Lieberberg on trying to remove the flex parking to make up for some of the mistakes that were made prior. A little more time, we perhaps can get this done. We in the downtown, and I think residential community want it done very badly. I'd like to, I think, not on my time, but if the town is not giving information to the residents and to myself and to the downtown, Alex, if you could elaborate on an item, the light pole on Millburn Avenue, which was referenced earlier, but it's referenced any number of times, which was knocked down. It's now been relocated, in the process of being relocated.
Footing has been dug.
Could you explain why?
Because it's being replaced.
But why?
For
Why
lighting
is
of
it
the
being
intersection.
relocated?
What other comments do you have?
That's not a comment. I think it's fair to have a question to.
That's fine. When you're
letting you know
done,
it's being
why don't you,
replaced.
why don't you, that question is
I
out there.
think
Go
the
ahead. What else
point
do you
is
have?
that that pole has been knocked down because vehicles have hit it any number of times. Taking down the pole isn't stopping vehicles from going over that curb. That curb has been, as Alex knows, the barrel that replaced it, that sat there for some number of weeks, was hit, by my estimation, by people calling and by the number of times going to camera, at least 17 times. So I'm putting you, Mayor, you Township Attorney, and you Administrator on notice. When someone is hurt, that you think by moving this light pole is going to cure the problem of someone going to get hurt, we are living on borrowed time. It is improper from a county perspective, from an engineering perspective, to take the liberty to go and do this and recognize that it's a danger to remove that pole that almost hit you and almost hit that young lady back there. On a different day, it came down on that bench and would have come down on both of your heads. And to move that pole now and to put it somewhere else where it's not designed to be is an acknowledgement of the failure of the entire complete street design. And that's just one of many things. On the same subject, there are 2 meters that have been removed on Main Street North. would you comment on why those meters, which are on the complete street plan, stop line was moved back, those meters are supposed to be on the downtown plan. They're part of the parking count, and you've removed 2 parking meters across from Rockin' Joe's. They're now not there anymore. Again, if we're not going to comment, I'll comment. Again, we're taking it into our own hands, not with county approval, not with engineering approval,
not a county
not with
road.
the traffic light is, and the traffic that passes through the intersection is county. And the line of traffic that backs up on Main Street, which those meters were removed to allow traffic to pass through more quickly. And that's not what was designed, and it's another acknowledgement in the failure of why that traffic light is not working, and the turns on that intersection still don't work even by moving back the stop line.
Thank you.
I'd like to make, because I think that was really not on my time, if you just give me one more. Last meeting, the mayor of Chatham came in front of you to ask about support about the pipeline. I just left the meeting in Livingston. The mayor of Livingston just happened to ask me what was Millburn's decision on supporting litigation potential of the pipeline to come through. And you discussed it at the last meeting. You put off any decision on that. I want to know if it's something that we're still considering.
We'll add it to our agenda next month, to the August agenda.
And same thing with recycling. I'd asked a question about that at the last meeting regarding whether we're paying for recycling, whether we're getting dollars. We were going to look into, I know you've extended the contract for a month, if that's something for the next meeting. I'm looking for follow-up when myself and others bring things in front of you as a township committee. It seems like they don't get responded to. I could go on, and I won't do this tonight, and whether it's the left turn on Main Street, updates would be kind, it would be polite, it would be generous to just let us know what is occurring. Businesses, and I'm not going to comment on DMDA tonight. I don't think the funds are going to be released in the next month. Very nice with David, very good report. But things are not fully accurate, and we don't report on the number of businesses that are going out of business in the next few months. So that needs to be part of a bipartisan report. You gave them an opportunity to speak tonight. It's not my time to speak to that here, but if you would please put it on the agenda for us to have comment, that would be.
You have your comments at the end in the public
3 minutes
session.
is not enough, and it's not polite. It's not correct.
Thank you.
Sarit Katz, 11 Fairfield Drive. First of all, I want to thank and commend Committeewoman Eglow for being a tireless advocate for transparency. There isn't really, if you come to a public meeting, a Board of Adjustment meeting, for example, and you can't look at the plans either, but having an additional camera, which was something that was mentioned originally in the presentation, it seems like it'd be better than nothing. In terms of how many people are watching, for example, a friend of mine who was live streaming to tonight's meeting said there were 5 people watching. So it's not exactly like the people on the committee are going to have a giant horde of, social media followers. And I think that since it's a public meeting and anybody could come, it doesn't really seem to be that much of a difference to have a few more people watching online. And I think it is really important. This, among other things, could be done to make the entire process of running this town more transparent. For example, we could post the texts of ordinances that are being proposed, that are being announced or introduced prior to this, between now and the second reading. Because I don't have I don't have chickens, but there are other people who might want to read the chicken ordinance, who aren't here and can't take it home, you can't see it, and there isn't any reason why people shouldn't get a chance to see these ordinances before they're voted on.
They're always posted after the first reading.
The full text?
Yeah.
Where is that?
Under the clerk's page, you'll find proposed ordinances.
Can we have this on the front page, on the landing page?
No.
No?
They need to be in a place where they should.
Yeah, they should be right where people come to see them. There's.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just to clarify, there is a running list under the clerk's page, proposed ordinances. There's also bid results, things like that, under the clerk's page as well. It's consistent with where those matters are handled.
Okay, but maybe so, but can we have some more, like on the landing page, just large text? Yeah, someplace so you can see it. We have, people in this town who are professionals at marketing who who can tell you that the landing page is what you see in the top part is the most important thing. So I think that's very important. I do think a lot of people don't know what's going on in town, and I don't think they don't want to know, but they have lives and they're busy. And they've got other things going on. So I think it's really worthwhile to try to make it as easy as possible for the residents and the taxpayers to know what's going on in town. I also want to commend Committeewoman Eglow and Committeewoman Benjamin Lieberberg for being very responsive regarding the flex parking. The survey, there are 65 plus pages of additional comments that came in on that survey, and they were overwhelmingly negative, not just about the flex parking, but indeed about the entire Complete Streets project. Overwhelmingly negative.
Thank you.
And I cannot tell people, I went to dinner on Saturday night and, met some new people, said I'm from Millburn. I can't tell anybody I'm from Millburn without them saying, what happened to the downtown? It is pervasive. No, I'm not finished, Mayor. And so it is hurting our reputation and the town, and people continuously, not just residents, but neighbors telling us they don't come to the downtown. And this is something that's a real challenge for the DMDA. It's got to be addressed. The fact, I didn't even realize about moving the light pole. One of the things that I was told about what makes the bump outs, so impossible to change is that the electric work was done and the poles were put in. But if we can move the pole, then we can reduce the bump outs too. I mean, if it has to be done, it has to be done.
All right, time's up, yes. Thank you, Ms.
Excuse me,
Katz.
Ms. Stone.
No,
Ms. Stone is not allowed to
It
do
is,
that.
it is
No one's
absolutely
allowed to do that.
inappropriate for her to
It's
say that.
inappropriate for
I
her
would,
as well as others,
all right,
but
so
I
I
would
would
appreciate it if
urge
you would
you,
finish.
Mayor, I would urge you, Mayor, again, commending committee people who want to be responsive, I would urge you, Mayor, to follow through on your commitment to form an ad hoc committee that would include stakeholders such as residents, landlords, merchants, and the town planner and others to address the issue of complete streets and hopefully to arrive at a comprehensive fix in the most cost-efficient way that would be able to address these major problems facing the town. It is not something that can be just wished away. It has to be addressed.
And not everyone wishes it away. Thank you.
Right, not everyone wishes it away, but it is a challenge for all the merchants and for all the residents to deal with.
Everybody on
Yes,
shore.
it is.
Thank you.
It's a challenge.
Thank you.
Richard Wasserman, 24 Inverness Court. I also want to commend Committee Woman Eglow and also Jackie Benjamin Lieberberg for their great work on Complete Streets and continuing to try to make things better, for the downtown. I recently went to my dry cleaner to try to do some of my dry cleaning, and what a surprise! On the front, we're moving, shut down, moved out. So I think that we have to keep in mind that as the process continues, more businesses are leaving the downtown, and it's actually being pretty stark that when you go downtown, that there are a number of vacancies. Most recently, my colleague, the jewelry store, is now gone, vacated from next to the movie theater. So, and I also would like to mention what Sari Katz had just said, that there's no reason to waste time and not have a committee of stakeholders that should be working on this as we're waiting, for, an appropriate time to receive bids, that would be appropriate to make things better. But the bump outs continue to be a hazard. The flex parking is very troubling for people that are getting out of their cars. And as I mentioned, merchants can continue to leave our town. So it is troubling. And I'm very happy to see what's happening at the DMDA. That I thought your presentation was excellent, and we look forward to some fresh air. Yes, there is. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Phil Kirch, 93 Cedar Street. Something, while we keep discussing, complete streets, whether it's good or bad, one thing, I don't know the answer to this, but I haven't heard figures about how many retail operations we have in town or how many storefronts we have. Do we have like 250? And if we have 250, how many of them are empty? How many of them are full? What kind of turnover is there? So I don't know if we've ever kept these figures. I think it would be, and I don't know if the DMDA would be the organization to do it, but I think that's one example of objective information that would help us very, very much with a controversy like this. Some people say the town's empty, some people say it's full, some people say nobody comes here, some people say you can't drive through it, which means somebody is coming here. I know Rocky's Gem store is opening across from Oscar's, so we see stores closing, we see stores opening. I couldn't say personally, from my perceptions, are we going in a positive or a negative direction, because I haven't heard any figures. So I think that's something that would be very useful, especially now, but certainly going forward. And I don't think it would be necessary to come up with someone who thinks complete streets is basically a good idea, but some people have spoken with the assumption that we're going to get rid of the bump outs, for instance. Now, I don't know what we're doing with flex parking. I think the bump outs are great. I see no reason to get rid of them. One other thing I'd mention before I finish is that I've heard people come up over the last 2 years and speak as though the township did not get permissions from the county, from the fire department, input from the police. I know for a fact they did multiple times. I know there would be objections and lawsuits even if they hadn't. So these are factually incorrect. They are even obfuscations and possibly lies that people are making. And I would say they were just mistaken, except they have been brought up continually and brought up simply to be negative about complete streets. So let's be objective, let's pursue it, let's get some data. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once, going twice. Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second.
Adjourn.
Fake news.
Everyone hates it. Do you know how many people come to me in the last 2 weeks saying you're not
Diana.
Are you? You're not going to start. You're right. You can't come up with a better idea. Nothing's